Well, good evening, and welcome to tonight's Discovering Our History Forum, this one on the history and the contributions of Akron's immigrant communities. We are so glad to have all of you here with us. My name is Mark Greer. I'm the Executive Director of the Akron Bicentennial, and we're really excited about tonight's forum, especially. This forum kind of started with a conversation between one of the panelists and myself, and we were so excited to have this scheduled in time for our bicentennial year. We want to just remind you of a couple of things. All of you hopefully received a question card when you came in. What you will be doing is we will have a Q&A portion after the panelists, and we want you to submit your questions in writing. During the forum, about halfway through, Akron200 staff, both Rose Vance Grom and Jacina Chapman, will go up and down the aisles. We'll collect these cards, and then we will submit them to be answered later. So please ask your questions. We are looking forward to that Q&A portion of tonight's forum. We also have a number of bicentennial events that are still coming up. We're in a sprint till the end of the year, but believe me when I tell you, there are many things left on the calendar. So if you haven't already, please visit our website at Akron200.org. And there you can see all of our upcoming events, and we'll talk more about a number of them at the end of tonight's forum. We're very happy to be in partnership with our exclusive media partner, WAOH-TV, who is recording and will be broadcasting this forum. At this time, I am proud to introduce tonight's moderator, who is Betty Lynn Fisher. Betty is the national consumer reporter for USA Today with more than 30 years of journalism experience. She is a Chicago area native and a University of Iowa journalism graduate, and she most recently spent 28 years at the Akron Beacon-Journal. There she covered a variety of topics from business, metro, and medical news. She was also the consumer reporter and columnist for 23 years. Betty is also an adjunct professor at Kent State University. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Betty Lynn Fisher.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. We are looking forward to a wonderful, collaborative evening together. First, I'd like to introduce our panelists. I'm going to start here closest to me. Lita Amati is a seasoned professional with a diverse background in finance, human resources, interpretation, and community development, holding a Bachelor of Business Administration from India. She has worked with the U.S. Embassy in Kabul as a human resources specialist and served as an interpreter at U.S. military bases in Qatar and Fort Dix, New Jersey. Currently, she supports Afghan and immigrant communities in the U.S. as a small business advisor with AFEO and as a community care lead at Asia, as empowering underserved populations through outreach and resource connection. Next, we have Mei Chen, who's a native of Hong Kong, co-founder and executive director emeritus of Asian Services in Action, Inc. She has spent her professional life creating opportunities out of obstacles, educating mainstream providers and funders, and mobilizing Asian Pacific Islander communities, building their capacity in Akron and the greater Cleveland area, developing and implementing projects for Asian American Pacific Islander communities to improve quality of life. Samantha Mutebi is a psychologist, wife, mother, and advocate for refugees and reproductive health. A former Congolese refugee, now American, her inspiring story has been featured in The Signal, Beacon Journal, Spectrum TV, and IdeaStream. She founded a health clinic in Uganda during her maternity leave to support refugees and host communities with mental and physical health services. Samantha also leads initiatives on menstrual health and maternal wellness, serves on boards such as the NACDC and Makasi Foundation, and uses theater and media to share immigrant and community stories. Dave DiDomenico has spent most of his life in North Hill, having grown up there and still residing there today. His paternal grandfather came to the United States when he was 14 years old and worked in the mines in Krebs, Oklahoma. Along with two of his friends, Dave recently published a fanciful book about life on the Hill in the 50s through the 80s called The Goomba Chronicles. And Madhu Sharma is the executive director of the International Institute of Akron. She's an Indian immigrant and a human rights attorney practicing and teaching in the field of immigration law and policy for over 27 years. I will add that, we are all immigrants. We are all families of immigrants. Myself, I am the daughter of immigrants. My parents were born in China, were raised in Taiwan, and then my father came to the United States in 1966 to Kansas State for his higher education with my mother and two sisters, and I was born in Chicago. Let's start a little bit by just talking a little bit about if a panelist can give us some background on why you came to Akron, or if your family has been here for generations, what are the historical reasons your family first came to Akron?
My name is Dave D. Domenico. I'm a third-generation immigrant. My grandfather, Antonio, came here when he was 14 years old. Didn't speak the language, didn't have many contacts here. He came from a little village high up in the mountains in the Apennines in Italy, a little village called Caroville. And some of you may be familiar with the Carovillese Club in North Akron. It was founded by my grandfather and people who came from that little town up in the mountains. We just celebrated our 100-year anniversary of the Carovillese Club, just last month. Yep. Anyway, when he got here at 14, he wound up in Krebs, Oklahoma, where a lot of the Italian community from Caroville went when they first got to the United States. And the reason they went there were jobs in the mining industry. And my grandfather went to work in the mines. They had a big mining catastrophe there in Krebs. I think about 100 men lost their lives. They pulled my grandfather out of the mine. And when they pulled him out, he said he would never go back in the mines again. He came to Akron because he heard they were hiring for the rubber industry. This would have been right around the turn of the 20th century. He couldn't get a job in the rubber industry, so guess what? He went to West Virginia and worked in the mines, because that was all he could get. Eventually, one of his contacts got him a job at Firestone, and he finished out his life working there at Firestone. He, like I said, he was 14 years old. My grandmother came here. She had about a sixth grade education is all. And they, in turn, hosted a lot of people that came over from that little city. When I was growing up, North Akron was known as Little Italy because there were so many Italians in North Akron. Now I think we have more Asian, but we still have a lot of Italians in North Akron. And I still live there. I love it there. It's a good place to grow up and a good place to live. Now, where did the Italians come from before they moved to North Hill? They lived under the old Akron Viaduct, which was the bridge before we had the All-American Bridge. It was the Akron Viaduct. And below there was an area called Dean Heights. And it was Italians, Polish, and African American. The Italians started to move up to North Hill, and so did the Polish. The African American didn't have the same opportunities that the Italians and the Poles had. And so they stayed in that area, and that area became known as Elizabeth Park. Now it's a little more integrated under there. So they came to North Hill. Not everyone was happy about that. The Masons on North Hill weren't too thrilled about it, and they built the largest building on North Hill. It's in the area called Temple Square, which is where Cuyahoga Falls Avenue meets North Main Street. And they built a big Masonic temple to let immigrants know we're still in charge here. And so that area is called, that's why it's called Temple Square. They built the Masonic temple there. So the Italian community, much like the immigrant communities of today, experienced a lot of prejudice. They weren't really welcomed by everyone. In fact, there's a, I don't know if you know the story, there was a lynching in New Orleans where 12 Italian Americans were exonerated in the murder of the local sheriff. And the community came together. They met in a public square with all their weapons, and they went to the jail, and they killed all 12 of the people that had just been waiting for their exoneration, the way the trial had gone. And when Teddy Roosevelt heard about it, he said, "I think it's a rather good thing." So that was the way the immigrants were treated back then. And unfortunately, we get a lot of that today, too. I'm going to pass it on.
Thanks, Dave.
I'll go. I'll start with, this is my 4th year in the United States of America. I consider myself pretty new, but not really. So I was working with the U.S. Embassy before the massive evacuation happened in my country in August 2021. I'm from Afghanistan, by the way. So I worked with U.S. military in different bases to finish my contract. The contract was based on they will send my family here safely, and I have to work with them till we are all out of Afghanistan. They sent my family before me, and I work with them different bases in different countries, like I mentioned, already mentioned in Qatar, in New Jersey. New Jersey was my last base that I worked with them as interpreter, and they give me an option of choosing 2 different states. I choose Michigan, and close to Michigan was Ohio. I had no clue about Ohio because none of my family members lived here. But they sent my family to Michigan, and I was hoping to go to Michigan, but they sent me here. I always tell my luck brought me here. I found home here, and that's how I ended up here. Thank you.
Well, I came to the United States when I was 9 years old from Hong Kong. And when we landed in San Francisco, Chinatown. And so I was thrilled because there were so many Chinese around. They all spoke Chinese. And then we lived in different cities: Waco, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, Boston. And then I met my husband at Vanderbilt. And he was a foreign student getting his graduate degree in electrical engineering. When he finished, he was offered his first job by University of Akron. And so, like a good wife, I followed him. And so we have stayed here since 1968. And at that time, Akron, it was not that easy to find a critical mass of Asians. Most of the Asians we knew were at the University of Akron teaching, or we didn't know they could have worked at Goodyear, or they were doctors, but pretty much our social circle were professors at University of Akron. And also, you always try to find Chinese restaurant, Chinese grocery store, and there were hardly any. But now, I think there are quite a few more. And quite a few more Chinese restaurants, right? There's a lot of takeouts around here. And so we stayed here ever since. We raised a family. My husband even brought his brothers and sisters to come to this country and lived in Akron, where they started their own family business. And their children have done well. And so I think Akron is a place that we pretty much will always call home.
Okay, Madhu's looking at me. I think I should go. My name is Samantha. Many of you know me by Samantha Biake, but recently my last name changed to Samantha Mtebi. So the newsletter has Samantha Biake, but I'm now Samantha Mtebi. I'm a former refugee from Congo, but currently proudly American by citizenship. America gave me the first passport and the first title of being called a citizen, because most of you remember of recent, our president, Donald Trump, signed a peace treaty for the Democratic Republic of Congo. We call it fake one, because in America it says they've signed a peace treaty, but home there is mass killing, exploitation, child labor, and everything. I left my home when I was as little as 10 and became a refugee in Uganda, where I did my education and obtained my psychology degree from there. Life as a refugee is so stressing, challenging, because in Congo we speak French, but I was forced to leave my country, leave the comfort zone, to a refugee camp and learn English. I tried my best and strive, and got a scholarship through the German embassy that helped refugees within the city of Kampala. And through the scholarship, I went to one of the best universities in Uganda and in Africa. It ranked the third one. That's Makerere University, where a majority of our president and leaders went to and acquired my psychology degree. I have a kind of traumatic background that probably if I share it with you right now, you'll be scared. I saw life rape. During my time in Congo, my mom was raped in our eyes when this rebel attacked our home. My dad was kidnapped in 2008. My sisters were stabbed. Things that you see on the TV and call action movie, I lived that. In Uganda, it was a bit hard. Not a bit, but it was extremely hard to live as a new person in there, because I had to learn the language in order to survive. I needed to make sure I work hard so that I could keep my scholarship, be there to help my mom take care of my sibling in her condition, and by luck, we were, resettled to Akron through IIA. As I came here on the panel, I told Madhu, how blessed am I to sit here on the panel with her and May on the same panel. So I arrived in Akron in 2019 through IIA. I'm proud of IIA and I'm proud of the work that they've done within the city of Akron through bringing and helping refugees. And within a week, through IIA I'm still the first, I don't know if there's someone else, but Madhu will tell us, first immigrant to acquire my office job. Yes. And I'm very proud of that opportunity that I received through the case workers from IA. IA is not only about bringing refugees within the city of Akron, but they do more than that, sorting talent and helping betterment of the city of Akron. I acquired my first job through Asia Inc. I was there, but I don't remember my job very well, but I helped with helping their clients or people who seek help from Asia to help them with interpretation, scheduling, appointment, and different things. And after 2 years, I was promoted into youth mentorship within Asia Inc. And it gave me a clear picture of what immigrants go through. I thought it was only Congolese, but no. It's the whole world. We are all immigrants in here. Today, we might be only 5 people on the panel, but we are all going through a certain thing in our life. People are suffering, lacking food. People are suffering with different challenges. So we are all immigrants in our different perspective. It's not only about leaving your home and coming here. So what has made me stay here is through the work that I did, through Asia Inc., and through IA, and through the board that I serve, NHCDC. I realized that there is a lot of things that need to be said. There's a lot of education that need to be passed around to people. And I happened to feature in the Broker Without Border play that was played on the after COVID in 2021, 2022, and 2023. And Broker Without Border talked about what we went through as refugees from day one, when we are born, when we settle to a new environment, and how we become commissioners or become broker for our families. It's not only where we were back home, but even here in America, we become commissioners for our families. So if they're going to the hospital, they have to carry one of us. If they're going anywhere, they have to carry one of us because majority of our parents came here not speaking the language, so we become the interpreters, we become the social workers, we become the case managers of our family. And through that, I founded Better Mind, a community organization that helps different refugees to better integrate into the system. And also, after giving birth to my first little sunshine, I realized there was lack of information when it comes to menstruation health and reproductive health, and we started a campaign called Mother and I. Because it's not only about giving birth, but there's a lot that our refugees and immigrant community are missing because of language barrier. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Well, can you see why I do what I do? These stories are why I chose to be an immigration attorney. And I'm happy to say most of the panel are my friends, and Dave is a new friend, I think. So I'm Madhu, and I am an immigrant from India. I came in 1971. I've been in the United States exactly 54 years. And we immigrated to Ohio originally. My dad came as an electrical engineer. In the 70s, rural America, mostly in the Midwest, but also in the South, was seeking doctors and engineers to fill gaps in just community needs. Today, the medical rural program still exists for now, but the engineering program, I think, no longer exists. My dad came to take a job in rural Ohio as an electrical engineer. He came before us. My older sister, myself, and my mom followed him a few months later. We were what today you would call employment-based or economic immigrants from India. We are from Punjab, and I grew up in rural Ohio. I left Ohio when I was about 18 years old to go to school, lived out in Los Angeles most of my adult life, and came back to Ohio just 10 years ago. And I chose Akron specifically. My parents don't live exactly right here. They live in the Dayton area. I came back to help take care of them as they age, but I wanted to live in an area that was close to where I grew up, knowing that there was a national park here. And I also, by chance, found a job at the Institute working. They were looking for a legal services director, and so the opportunity for me to return to Ohio was presented by Akron. And I fortunately was able to come back and learn about this rich history that Dave has given us a bit of a highlight of. But I'm proud now to be, I think, the first immigrant executive director of the International Institute of Immigrant and Refugee Servicing nonprofit. But it was founded by a Lebanese immigrant, and I think it has a rich, long history of over 100 years in Akron, serving all different waves of immigrants who have come to America and who've come to the Akron community. So I feel really lucky to do my work, and if we had time, I usually spend time in rooms asking other people their immigrant stories, even if they're 3 or 4 generations. They're always great stories.
Well, great. Well, thank you. A few of you have already answered this, but I'll open the opportunity just in case anybody wants to add. You know, what about Akron has made you stay?
I'll go. I stayed because Akron became home to me. It was like about 2-3 weeks. I just arrived to Akron. I got a job offer from Asian Services in Action. Believe me or not, that job was very important to me. It was very close to what I really wanted to do, to help people, to help the community. I believe I was acting as culture broker, where I'm navigating this multicultural landscape, and through Asia, I was able to teach different communities about American culture and vice versa. And as a Muslim, doing this kind of job is very important to me, as there's a verse in our holy book, Surah Nisa, ayat 36, worship Allah and do not associate anything with Him, and do good to parents, relatives, orphans, the needy, the near neighbor, and the distant neighbor, the companion at your side, the traveler, and those whom your right hands possess. I believe there is so much we can do, and I feel like if I wanted to be part of this, part of building a stronger and more inclusive community in Akron. That's why I stayed.
I think I will go next. The strongest reason why I chose to stay in Akron is because Akron is community-oriented. It's not only about me in Akron, it's all about community. It's all about the inclusion within the city of Akron. I remember in 2022, that was before I became a mother. I was so active with activity, community organization, community work that was happening within the city of Akron. And I remember our recent chief of police sending someone to come and have a talk with me because he wanted to better understand how best he could get into the immigrant community and be of help. And we started a program that is helping refugees understanding how best to live, how to live free from crime, and how to strive within the city of Akron. Secondly, when it comes to community help, we do have plenty of resources within the city of Akron that is started and championed with the Akronites. So Akronites will look after ourselves. I remember in 2024, 2025, the beginning of this year, I told myself, I remember telling Dave, I'm going back to Africa. I feel I'm done with the routine of 9 to 5 work. I'm going back. I went to Africa, spent there 6 to 8 months. Luckily enough, it was not just being there. I started something that I'm proud of myself because of what I saw in Akron. I started an hospital for the refugees that are in the camp in Uganda. And in June, I felt like I miss Akron. Came back, 2 days, a great sister and friend of mine, my theater director, called and is like, Samantha, there is Akron history being told and would love your story to be told. Would love to have your input. And that's how I happened to be in the play that you saw at Water Park called The Blimps that talked about Akron history from way back with Firestone, Cyberlink, and many more. And I realized that Akron is not just Akron, but there's that richness within the city that we need to explore only if we join hands and promote love among ourselves.
I think I stayed in Akron, first of all, because I was married to somebody who works here, so I have to stay here. But, you know, my profession was marriage and family therapy. And that's not your usual choice of profession for an Asian. Everybody wants to be an engineer or a doctor or a banker or a lawyer. And so mental health is not something, is a path that is very frequently used, by our community. And so what happened is that in my 3 years of working in mental health here in Akron, I did not see one immigrant or refugee client. Most of my clients were from mainstream. And a funny incident was that I was working at Northeast Family Service, and my director said, "May, you're going to be really happy today." I said, "Why?" "Because I think you're going to get your first Asian client." I said, "Oh, and her name is Mieko Lincoln." I said, "Oh." I said, "I'm really excited to meet her." And so at the time of our appointment, my client came in, and she was this beautiful African-American woman. I said, "Oh, so how did you get the name Mieko?" She said, "Well, my mother said that was one of her favorite characters in Madame Butterfly." So that was the extent of my excitement with an Asian client, okay? But I also know, living in this community all these years, in the West Coast, East Coast, families, Asian families are like all families, are like some families, are like no other families. So they have their share of problems. In Akron, even though not much was shared, there's a lot of suicide among refugees and immigrants, okay? And you can understand the adjustment is very challenging. However, it's a very hidden problem. And so that was back in the early 70s, 80s, 90s. So what you see now is a transformation, because back then there were no services. And the challenge to me was, do I sit in my office and see clients every day, or can I do better to serve the community on a whole? So I used my training from family therapy to do family therapy on communities. I mean, pretty much it's the same, okay? Community is like family. If there's a lack of ability for a community to help their members do not do as well, okay? Just like family, okay? So a lot of the work that I did with family therapy was transferred to working with community. And that's when I founded Asian Services. And I think I stayed in Akron because the challenge was, there was nothing. And I always people say, well, there's nothing. Your Asian community is very invisible. We don't even know who they are, where they are. But, I know they're here. And I think for me, to increase their visibility, to help them function at a level that they can thrive, was the challenge that I wanted to take. And that's why, in spite of all the negative perceptions about having a social service organization for our community, I took it upon as a challenge. And now, we started with a $1,500 health grant. And now Asia is an $8 million agency. So I think the effort and the work was worth it. And it also shows that there's great need. And very happy that I stayed in Akron, where even though something was lacking, became a great opportunity to help the community.
Just a reminder that if you have any questions that you'd like to ask the panel, we have staff that will collect those, and we can pepper those in with some of the questions that we've got here for the panel as well. Let's talk about, is there anything what was one of your biggest challenges that you have faced?
I go. The biggest challenge is, I would break it down into words: racism and xenophobia. But the hardest one was like sometimes I would feel like feeling invisible, not being like not being sure my skills or background or voice would matter or no. That's why I made this part of my mission to make sure new immigrants or newcomers don't feel the same isolation that I did or people before me did, and to make sure they are being valued as member of community.
I would say that I had the opposite experience as Lita. When I came to Akron from a big city, I struggled with the visibility, particularly in my role at the International Institute of Akron. In fact, I reached out to May one day. Do you remember the conversation? I was just trying to get my head around and understand this city, this community, and race, and politics around immigrants. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. And so for me, the biggest challenge was adapting to being in spaces, public spaces, work spaces. My professional, personal, and public life went from being deeply diverse and knowing people from all over the world to being predominantly white American. And that was such a struggle for me because I felt too seen, right? People wanted too much from me. They wanted to understand everything about immigrants and immigration and my experience and the experience of everyone I'd represented over the years, the law, the policy, and it felt like I was alone. So knowing the women on the panel, who I've now come to know very well, but also building a community around myself of immigrants was a challenge for me, but it was not impossible. And it was definitely necessary for me to survive as a leader of a nonprofit.
I think for me, one of the biggest challenge that I'll say I faced was during the moment when I became pregnant. I realized that there is little and no information that was shared with the refugee community when it comes to mental health that affect them after pregnancy and information that is around pregnancy. When one is pregnant, majority of the information that are out there focus most on the media stream, and these people on the other side have no access to this information because of lack of language. And that's why I started the program that I'm doing right now, to make sure that I talk to this organization and let them know that there is this community over here that needs your help in this and this service. How best can you help them? Do you need interpreters? Do you need me to be there? And also one of the biggest second challenge that I'll talk about that I faced was, as Madhu said, everyone comes to me to ask me about this and that because they've seen me probably in the news and they think that, okay, she's the person who has more information about refugees, yet we have different stories. I have my story from what I faced in my household, and other refugees do have their own stories that they faced when they're coming here during resettlement and during the transition.
I'll be quick. A lot of the Italians I grew up with on North Hill have moved to the suburbs. And I like to tease them. I say, you moved to the Holy Lands. I say, I'm still here in the ghetto. But a lot of the criticism I hear of the new Asian community comes from those same Italians who were immigrants 50, 60 years ago. And I tell them, I say, you left, you don't know what it's like here. I love it here. I meet a lot of interesting people from all over the world. And it's not so bad. We have our storefronts are no longer vacant because the immigrants see the opportunity and they open businesses. And they're walking around, people on the sidewalks. You feel safer because there are people around. So I don't take lightly the criticism from the people that moved off the hill and now criticize it because there's a new wave of immigrants.
What is your vision for Akron in the next 25 years and the next 50 years?
My vision for Akron, I want to picture it on that light over there. I envision a city whereby history is not hidden, whereby our challenges, my challenge is a community challenge, whereby my suffering is a community suffering. My 25 years from now, I envision Akron whereby love is shared from house to house. I usually tell people that I meet, it's hard to tell a child to be loving if as parents portray hate through our talk and our different ways. Because a child will never be racist if he or she doesn't get that from home. Because home is the first church, home is the first community. So children usually reflect what is outside. And I envision Akron as a community or a city that love each other, hold each other's hand, and not divided because of politics, religion, or other different reasons.
My vision for Akron to become a model of inclusive growth in 25 years, a place where diversity isn't just celebrated, but it is seen as a strength that drives innovation, culture, and economic vitality. I want to see immigrant business thriving. Young leaders from all backgrounds taking on civic roles, and communities working together across differences. In 50 years, I hope Akron is known nationally as a city that embraces change, welcome newcomers, and build prosperity through unity. That's it.
What I see is that in 25 years, I hope the existing institutions, organizations, agencies, businesses would look into including immigrants, refugees, their needs in their planning, in their infrastructure, in their budget, in their programming. I think that really demonstrates a high level of cultural sensitivity, and that will help immigrants and refugees feel supported and welcome here. I think a lot of times what I'm seeing now with agency, especially when there's a language problem, is that it's very reactive. There's no proactivity. They don't know what to do. They keep saying, well, we don't have the money to do it, blah, 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 you know. But the thing is, but we want to help them. But I think it really means that from the beginning, you need to plan to include them in your services, in your structure, in your budget. That is very, very important.
You know, I think it's hard to think 25 and 50 years from now when I'm hoping we survive the next 3. Or just this year, please. I feel that we are in a reactive mode, or let's call it responsiveness as a community, to the policies and the rhetoric coming right now out of the administration. So when you look to the future, it feels trite for me to think of what immigrants need when right now I just hope our country, our nation survives the deep-rooted immigrant history that we cultivate in the Akron community. We have generations of immigrant populations that make up Akron and that make up our nation, and I think what's always made for a vibrant economic, cultural, historical space is to not just welcome, but create a space of belonging for the new wave of immigrants, and we are really poised as a nation to do that best now. But unfortunately, I feel like we're a little bit in a space of, I feel like we're in the early 1800s again, right? So I'm concerned that we have a lot of work to do before we start thinking about infrastructure and we start thinking about the needs of our community. Really, it's all in arts and culture and economic opportunity, right? And small business growth. All those are spaces in which Akron will thrive if we survive. And, you know, with what's coming down the pipeline for immigrants who are going to be cut off of food benefits and public benefits, I'm deeply concerned that we're going to be collectively as a community in survival mode trying to take care of each other. So, you know, hopefully we can survive is my hope.
Wow, there are some great questions here. I wish that we had all evening, so I'm sorry we won't be able to get to all of them. Let's touch a couple of them. How has recent socio-political upheaval affected immigrant communities in Akron? I'll repeat that. How has recent socio-political upheaval affected immigrant communities in Akron?
I think that is directed to Madhu.
All right, I'll take it. You know, there's a lot of fear. We all know. We're watching the news. We're hopefully following the stories of our own community immigrants and how they're being impacted. In the early days of the administration, we saw undocumented immigrants in the Akron community, children who were afraid to go to school, parents who were holding their children back from school out of fear of ICE raids. There haven't been ICE raids in the Akron area, but undocumented community members have been deported. Families have been separated. And there's a lot of misinformation still around the, you know, who should quote unquote self-deport, which is not a thing. There's no legal structure of self-deporting. It's basically people can leave if they want. So there's a population that was immediately impacted. Refugees who were resettled last year and in the last 3 years were looking forward to family reunification, right? They left people behind that were going to join them. They should have been coming this year. We haven't resettled a refugee since January 24th of 2025. So there's families who were waiting that are indefinitely separated and possibly permanently separated. There's a deep sense of fear, even for those of us who are longstanding immigrants. Just being on this stage creates a risk for us at times, right? So that fear is a fear of violence because that's what we're seeing, and that's you know, essentially what's being reported in the news, but we're also hearing in the communities that people are being subjected to that. I also think there's more coming down the pipeline. I don't mean to be, we have to be, you know, SNAP benefits are about to be cut off, and Medicaid is about to be restricted to people, and refugee and immigrant populations will be impacted by that, as are Americans who are going to be impacted by that. First-generation U.S. citizens, you know, you naturalize, you become entitled to some of these benefits. They will have struggles as well. So we're going to see, I think we're going to see people sick, and we're going to see people in hunger, and we're going to have to come together as communities in this country and in Akron to support each other. And I do feel there is a frenetic energy right now around the experience of being an immigrant. Meaning it doesn't feel like the promise of America right now. And I'm sure that's how it feels for all of us.
Yeah, I would go, but as you all can see in the news and some of the information that are going around, I'm not sure if this is going to put me in trouble, but I'm going to share it no matter what. Some of the news is that going around is not true too. Some people tell that like ICE has a list of people who are being deported, but our clients are being taken from the road just because they are not driving and they look different. They were taken, they keep saying with their broken English that we have documents, but no one is listening to them. Why? Because you look different? They were taken for a few hours, and they found out that they have documents but they were released. What about their dignity and respect? what was wrong with them just because they look different. They're like, people are afraid to go to school. Students, kids, they don't want to go to school after hearing what is happening. Yeah, sorry, it's bad.
I think to add on what Madhu and Lida said, this is the moment, as I've been saying it from the very beginning, of coming together. This is a moment of looking for your direct neighbor. Majority of us are seated here, but I bet you don't know who's your next neighbor. You don't know who lives in the house next to you. Majority of us live here, but we don't know how North Hill look like. We don't know what is in the Nepali or Indian or Italian shop. What do they sell in there? So this is the time of us coming together as a community to protect and inform people. Because the reason why there is misinformation going around is because we are not together. But if I will go out and speak to Paranita or speak to someone else and tell them, you know what, this is what is going on. A is A. This is black, not blue. Do you think it will be easier for misinformation to enter and people be affected? And the same goes with the SNAP benefit and everything. We know the reality of things. We know our president, once he has said something, he has said it. How about waking up in the morning and see the little loaf that you have and divide it by 2 and say, I'm giving it to my next neighbor? Because there's a lot of reality, not only within the immigrant community, but even within our American friends.
In the interest of time, I think this is going to be our last question, and then I'll invite Mark back up. But how can locals help immigrants in our Akron community?
Come again?
How can locals, how can Akronites help other people and immigrants in our community?
The best way for Akronites to help the immigrant is, first of all, welcoming them, accepting them, and giving them a voice. The reason why they are called voiceless is because there is a hole between the immigrant community and the media stream community. Majority of us try not to go to them because we say, probably they don't speak English, and to be hard for me to speak to them. But try approaching them. Say hi and see if the person says hello back to you. Start the conversation. And that will be the best way to spread love. Because once you show someone that you love them, through greeting them, it's enough. Our immigrant community is just a simple smile. I don't know if I'm lying, but that's what I know. As long as you smile to them when they greet you, they welcome you so fast. But once they greet you and you ignore, they will distance themselves to you. And that's the only way as Akronite can do best to welcome these refugees and help them.
I can say also that, well, you shouldn't smile at everybody. Some cultures don't appreciate direct eye contact. But I do feel that it's about curiosity, right? So if we approach each other with curiosity, we'll have an openness. But to be more pragmatic about it, there are, Asia Inc. has a food pantry. They're collecting donation items for food, just preparing and mobilizing for the hunger that's coming down the pipeline. IIA is collecting non-perishable food items as well. We're going to work collectively to ensure that immigrant communities in the area have access to the resources that are culturally appropriate for them in terms of food. I also think connecting, Asia Inc. also has a legal department, we have a legal department, connecting individuals to resources and supporting the organizations that provide those resources are very important right now because we are deeply being defunded, right? So any help that the community can give to the organizations that are providing supports to immigrant communities does reach immigrant communities. But aside from that, it really is, how, self-educate, approach it with curiosity. You wouldn't be in this room if you weren't curious to begin with. Take, your own immigrant heritage and story and share it, just because it is a common experience. Our stories are not terribly unique. There's histories and histories of Americans who have stories of how they came, why they came, and how they ended up in Akron, Ohio. So share those stories, and in the spaces that you navigate, I like to say, surround yourself by not the experts, but by the curious people, right? The ones who have questions, and not everyone who has the answers, because these are the times where we need to ask better questions and not have all the answers anymore, right? The answers that are coming right now from our politics in America are not serving us as a community and as communities around the nation. So I think we need to ask the right questions to say, what do we expect for our neighbors who are immigrants, and what do we expect for ourselves as Americans to uphold our values towards immigrants?
I also believe it is important, certainly local Akronites can do a lot to help welcome the immigrants and refugees by making an effort to know them. But I also believe it starts from the top. I think the leadership in our community need to exemplify that kind of behavior. We call it parallel processes. And if we see the leadership interested in cultural sensitivity, in being inclusive, I think that's going to filter down to the people who work under them. And I need to see more of that in this community.
As Samantha and Madhu said, start with listening to them. Do not think lesser of immigrants. Give them equal opportunities. And also create a space where immigrants can lead and contribute. Support immigrant-owned businesses. We have a lot of them in North Hill, Akron. And also volunteer with the organization that they provide resources and advocate for inclusive policies. I have a last sentence that I wrote I want to share with you guys. When we invest in one another, everyone benefits, because if a thriving immigrant community means a stronger Akron for all of us.
So I've been told we have a little bit more time, so we'll do a couple more questions.
Yeah.
Do you feel like we have enough representation in Akron?
I think, as someone who comes from Africa on the panel right here, I don't think there is representation. May just mentioned it. Majority of our people are back and are not welcome because of language barrier. There is less information reaching them, and that's the same way when it comes to being represented. You find out that when it comes to representation, it's only one person who's going on in and out, and the rest are staying behind because of lack of language availability. And also, it comes from the top. The top is not approaching the immigrant or these Congolese refugees, or I would say Rwandese or Burundian, because they say, oh, we don't speak the same language. How are we going to penetrate in their culture? How are we going to do this? So they take their space, and these other people take their space, and that's bring lack of representation within the city of Akron.
I always look at the boards in this community and see whether they reflect the population they serve. And a lot of times I don't see that. It's pretty much mainstream representation, and I don't see immigrants or refugees because, many of them are very educated. They're leaders in their community, and they're very qualified to serve on the boards. And I think they needed to be included in that leadership. So when you talk about representation, I think there's a lack of it on the boards in this community.
I think at the present time, I think a lot of immigrants are kind of laying low. I think they're afraid to speak out. And I think it's up to those of us who are third and fourth generation to speak for them. I know a lot of my friends that no longer live in Akron, when they say something negative about the immigrant community, and I'll respond to it and I'll say, here's what's good about them, here's what's good, and I'll mark several things. And it's like an eye-opener for them because they never talk to people that have a positive outlook on it. You know, they're out in the suburbs and everything in the inner city is bad and negative, and they need to hear it, that it's not so bad. And diversity is not a bad word. It's fun. It's better to have people that come from different backgrounds that you can talk to, and it's very interesting.
You know, I would say that when you look at the demographics of new immigrants, not generational, but new immigrants in Akron, I don't know if the census is accurate, but it's rather low. So if you compare that to the representation in our local offices, in our public spaces, you almost can meet that number because it's only around, you know, it's not a high percentage. I think last I checked it was about 5 to 6%. So when you say, the question is well framed, right, in saying like, do we have enough representation? And I think Dave pointed out something very important, which is sometimes it's about more than representation, and it's about the diversity and the value that's added from that. And you know there's an attack on diversity at the moment, so I think there's a need to be braver, I think, than the policies or the rhetoric coming out of politics, American politics right now. And I do believe Akron has the will to have that, you know, courage, I should say, to not let go of the value of diversity in our spaces. And I do agree, May, that our boards are not reflective. I also think the pipeline for boards are not diverse. And that has a lot to do with immigrants and you know, any people of diverse culture, right, and representation, deciding that's how they want to spend their time. And I do think Americans want to spend less and less of their time volunteering in ways, you know, that are structured like boards are structured, because there's so much, you know, there's so much we can do in our communities right now that so many of us just want to get involved and be hands-on in the community. And I think that is the trend in volunteering and shaping community culture right now. And I don't think it's a bad trend. I'm not sure boards are as effective as we expect them to be, and I'm not sure they'll survive this shift in culture that we're experiencing as a nation. But in terms of representation, of course, we can do better. We need to do better, and I have struggled with understanding that question deep, and I think that's why I called you, May, because I was worried about every space I'm in, and you know, we're an immigrant service provider, and every space I was in was not reflective of at all of people who were impacted by our work, and I didn't understand why. Now I realize it's much of what Dave said. There's a reticence to throw in. It's just a bit of a fight, you know? So people have to want to join that fight. And I also want to say, because I think it's really important to note that even people who are generations deep into their immigrant heritage have something to contribute, right? Like if you're 3 generations in, you're still connected to your story, and that still adds value to the experience of immigrants. So I do feel like, you know, we need to reframe how we think of it as well.
Are there any customs or traditions from your or your family's origins that you carry on in Akron to help you stay connected to your past or cultural history?
Well, I celebrated the Valley last week and took a week off work. That's the first time I've ever done that as a professional, because we don't normally have those days off work. And then when I went to hike in Cascade Valley Park, I saw many Bhutanese refugees also celebrating the Valley. So yes, and of course the foods we eat. When I clean house, sometimes I have Indian music on. Yeah, there's so much of my culture shapes my day-to-day life. And anyone who knows me, who's a friend, no matter where you're from, you know that. You are forced to experience some Indian food and some Indian music. How about you
Betty,
guys?
I'm really glad that Akron is celebrating Chinese New Year
Yes.
every year at the Civic Theater. They do each year they do even a better job. And I love the Cherry Blossom Festival in April, and I was amazed how many people were there. And what amazed me also is that I saw so many Japanese. Usually Japanese, they keep somewhat to themselves. I mean, that's their tradition, and they're not very visible, but the cherry blossom really brought them out in big numbers. So I think we can study, you know, in counseling, we say, if it works, do more of it. If it's not broken, don't fix it, okay? So I think you see these festivals as working, so maybe the city need to invest more in sponsoring these cultural festivals.
We still have a spaghetti dinner at the Carvalais Club. If you don't know where that's at, it's near the Swensons on Cuyahoga Falls Avenue. We also have a bocce ball league, so if you like to play bocce ball or if you'd like to learn how to play, you can go there. It's a lot of fun. And like I said, we just recently celebrated our 100-year anniversary. We had a big dinner and celebrated that. It's an active club. We've got a Christmas, North Hill Christmas party coming up. And we just had a Halloween party, North Hill Halloween party, which we had at the Italian Club. So we try to keep our traditions alive.
I think it's almost the same. When you talk about Congolese, it's all about food and music. And if you've seen the black beans on stage, you know what I'm talking about. Music and shaking your waist. Yeah. And food. Yeah.
Yeah, we always try to celebrate our New Year, which is always on March. And we do Eid celebrations, and we do, by the way, our New Year is called Nowruz, which translates as New Day. And we do Ramadan, which is 1 month of fasting. Then after Ramadan, we do 3 days of celebration, which is Eid. And pretty much that's it. We have good food, Afghani food. If you guys want recommendation, we have restaurants in Cleveland, and we are working on opening one in Akron soon. One of my clients is trying to do that, and we are trying to help them. So, yeah.
Okay, this will be the last question. What can we do as a community to combat the brain drain of young talent leaving Akron, and what can we do to encourage them to stay?
Okay.
I don't want to go fast this time around. I have the answer, but I'll wait for the rest of the panelists.
I don't think it's different for immigrant communities' brain drain than it is for the greater community. And I'm probably the biggest outsider. Other than Samantha, I think I've been here the least amount of time, maybe it's Samantha and Lita. I've only been in Akron for 10 years. So when I see why all young people in Ohio want to leave, right? They just want to go to the big cities. And I think it's just based on a lack of opportunity. So in order to create economic opportunity, keep wages, at a living wage, wages are rather depressed in the Akron area. And I know the cost of living is low, but ambitious people dream big. They don't dream small. So it's really important to create a sense of opportunity. And then I also have to say, one thing Akron does beautifully well is the arts. And I know there's been a lack of investment recently or just funding for the arts. So we have to continue to support the arts in Akron. I think the Civic and a lot of the shows there make people feel like they're part of a vibrant, fun place to live, where things are happening, which is really, I think, essentially what people are seeking in happiness in life, right? Some culture, being able to make a living, and we've got the beautiful parks. I mean, we cannot beat this gorgeous metro parks and the Cuyahoga Valley National Park that we live in. So there's just a lot of opportunity. But, when we scale back to rhetoric that sounds like the 1950s, I think people will go to the places that will battle that, rhetoric, that will take it on, that will fight for values that give you opportunity and progress. So we have to do that as a community, even in Akron.
I think to keep the younger generation here, you need to think about their formative years in Akron. Many of them do well. However, many of them struggle. They struggle because in schools, their peers really don't understand them well. They're new. And so there also exists a lot of bullying. And if a child is bullied, that does not leave a good sense of belonging to the community. And I think it could scar him for life. So I think it's very important that the children who are going to school now, that the school system need to train their teachers to be culturally sensitive to the new communities that are coming in. And I don't know how much of that is happening, but I know that there still remains a lot of work done because a lot of these kids just don't feel like they fit or they belong. And if they don't feel they fit and belong, they're not going to stay in Akron. We have a lot of work to do.
Okay, you go.
As someone who has worked with Akron Public School, one thing that I will say is to better help this young talent, I won't beat around the bush, it's funding. Akron Public School has tried its level best to inform teachers, to hold training, telling them about diversity, telling them about the refugee. We've seen organizations stepping inside school. Asia Inc. does so through there's a community program that Asia Inc. does within school. I myself go to school and do the advocacy, but what is limiting here is the funding. Because majority of us don't want to step forward and do the volunteering. Because we'd be saying, who will pay that bill if I go ahead and volunteer? So funding is the biggest portion right here. If there is donation, if there's people giving in the little that you have in order to facilitate this program, it will make a big change and to help this young talent. Because within this immigrant community, much as we can't see now, majority of them come from their home when they have acquired a talent, but they can't exercise it because of lack of funding. There's lack of space, and this space cannot be given to them free of charge. They need to pay for it in order to exhibit and show what they have. So funding is the biggest portion right here. And this is a call to the city of Akron to step in and welcome these people on the panel and see, I know the budget is small, but how can we spare like at least 1% of our budget to the refugees and immigrant community and the talent that they have?
I would say, you already talked about the students and all, but I would say offer them good wages, provide affordable housing, accessible healthcare, and in general, if young generation feel like they are being heard or they are being supported, and they feel like they make a difference in their city, believe me or not, they would love to stay and make their lives here.
Well, thank you so much to our panelists for spending some time with us and having this engaging conversation. I'm going to invite Mark back up.
Well, thank you so much, Betty. And can we have another round of applause for our amazing panel? And thanks to all of you for such great, engaging questions. We are so happy to have had this forum and such an important topic, especially during our time. Our thanks again to WAOH-TV for recording tonight's forum and to all of you for coming out and attending. Again, our thanks to our panelists and our moderator, Betty Lynn Fisher. Thank you again.